Seve, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. So just before this episode, you'd mentioned you're from upstate New York and that your parents work or worked at Kodak.
They worked at Kodak. I think one still works at Kodak.
Wow.
The skeleton of Kodak.
Wow.
So.
I mean, you say that, but they're like kind of on the up again in some ways in that film has still got niche uses and kind of like vinyl records. I thought it had actually started growing again. Is that...
Film has started growing again?
I thought so. I mean, like vinyl record sales went up for years on end. Remember that?
Really? Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
because they become cool. Like everyone forgot about them in the early 2000s when we had CDs because they looked the same. And then you have this posterity about it. You just like, this is a beautiful old device. It's like mechanically encodes audio. It's so cool.
Yeah, it kind of becomes a different kind of industry, like a nostalgic sort of industry.
Yeah.
I think Kodak does a lot of printing now. I think that's where
interesting.
I could be wrong. I haven't like read the public report or anything like that, but I want to say that they do a lot with just like you get a lot of mail and they're printing that.
Oh, do you know which of your parents, was it your mum or your dad that still works there?
It's my dad who still works there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your dad, do you know if he's working in film or printing or what he does there?
I think he's on the print side. I think he's on like maintaining old printer software. So it's not like cutting edge, like this stuff is gonna take over. I think like when I think about Kodak, I don't want to talk too much smack, but when I think about Kodak, I'm like, how are they going to get like the next gen talent, right? Yeah. That like you need if you want to grow. I feel like you have to have next gen talent to grow, or some other unfair advantage. So like something people have been talking about a lot recently is Oracle, how it makes tons of money. And, it's advantage? On the growth, even though the sentiment towards, I don't know what your sentiment is, but certainly from everyone in my circle, they say, do not use Oracle, stay away.
Yeah, they will get you. And I mean, like, they're litigious as well, right? Like, they and Google were fighting it out for a decade or so over, was it some Java API?
Yeah. It was like, I think it was the big split between, like, sort of official Java and OpenJDK.
Ooh.
And a lot of precedent was established in that case because it was like, okay, our API's copyright. But then there was also some, like, it literally looked like internal code was copy and pasted. And so there was like, that's the thing with court cases is like they don't always make good precedent cases unless they're kind of clean cut. And it wasn't totally clean cut from my understanding.
I mean, nothing going on for the duration it did could possibly be clean cut.
Right.
My recollection of that case was that it did go on for, I think it was 8 years.
It was a long
best
time.
Part of a decade.
It was a long time. And it was going to have huge impacts on Android. But
to your point, you don't really think of Oracle as like the good guy typically.
No, and it's not even like they didn't make Java, from my understanding. It was like the company they acquired. I'm like blanking on the name though.
NetBeans or something.
Yeah, now I gotta know who made Java. Who made Java? We're doing the search.
Have you tried
Sun Microsystems?
Sun Microsystems. That's right. Sun's still big as well. Like,
I think they really.
I mean, they're just still like they make servers and stuff. They're still just like they're not they're not as dominant as they once were, but they're still like a reasonably sized company with like probably thousands of employees.
Yeah, that's true. There's so many businesses in the U.S. that there's just in general so many businesses.
In a functioning economy, like let's be clear, like you need someone stable that actually just does something consistently.
Right. But I guess my point is it's like. When I think about it, because I only know so few brand names, it feels like winner take all, but there's actually so many small businesses, especially like the other day I was talking to somebody who does like a really obscure thing in electronics. They scan PCBs and then they try to recreate the Gerbers. That's the company.
Do you know who was this?
I think it was ScanCAD or Scan something.
Okay, I feel like I might have heard of them. I have a friend, John McMaster, who does a lot of public works. He's famous in the space, and he decaps chips and scans them as well, and does some reverse engineering as sort of part business.
Does that and that actually plays into a business?
Yes.
Really?
He like works as a consultant, assisting in reverse engineering efforts. And like engineering analysis efforts. Now, this isn't necessarily copy patented things or whatever, but there's a lot of understanding you can get, even from old equipment. Maybe use something that from 40 years ago that you want to reproduce or recreate. It's important sometimes.
Yeah, that's what the PCB scanning I think is how it has an industry is I was talking to someone at a really big company, and they were talking about spending millions of dollars of effort to recreate old PCB designs. And one of the problems was that software kind of didn't run anymore that it was created in. Whatever it was created in, some very old drafting software, nobody knows how to use it. It's actually less effort. You can imagine the engineers in the room like, let's just make it from scratch and like Altium or whatever.
Redraw it.
Right? Like, it's not that complicated. It's from 40 years ago.
It's a 2-layer PCB with 3 old components.
And I feel like there's not enough appreciation for the fact that electronics go out of date, and you have 100. Even if you only have 100 chips on a board, like the chance that one of those like is just gonna like not be available for some reason, there's some supply chain issue, or they're not making it.
Yep.
And then you just need to replace that one thing. So you need to recreate the whole board.
Yep.
That it's actually big. Like electronics you can't get enough inventory for electronics where they last that long.
No, and of course not. And beyond that, like, this isn't like a functional replacement, right? Like you need to prove that it works in your application for the next N years of abuse kind of type of problem. And like some things progress, but I remember there's one company, Helion Energy. Have you ever come across them?
No.
So they're actually another YC company, which is wild because they are a fusion reactor company.
Oh, wow.
They're out of, I think they're just out of Seattle, and they are making like these incredibly cool fusion reactor architecture. I'll botch this, so I apologize to anyone listening, but roughly how it works is they have a whatever their fuel is, they have a fuel source, which is subtly different. I think they use deuterium instead of tritium, or the other way around, where other reactor companies are going at, the toroidal or tokamak reactors are going after one, they're going after another. And they compress it, and they basically shoot these two, when you blow a smoke ring, right? They blow two basically smoke rings of this plasma at each other in this kind of cone. It looks like an hourglass towards the center.
Wow. With
a big set of, you know how a coil gun works, right? You just have a whole bunch of coils, and as the plasma's going through.
How do you know how a coil gun works? That's what I want to know.
It was the first project that Narayan, my co-founder, and I did together.
Oh, no way.
That's actually a good story too.
Wow. Okay, we got to get into that, but first, let's understand this reactor.
So it's pretty cool. Go search it up on YouTube because it's so worth watching. But basically, you got this hourglass converging in the center, coil gun. You fire these two, you can picture them as smoke rings, these two toroids of plasma at one another that you've heated to the highest you can generally heat things at the end. And by firing them at each other, you compress them down this hourglass, and then they smack into each other in the middle. And as they collide, that collision energy is sufficient to induce fusion.
Wow.
And then this reaction, unlike most others, unlike the others that people are chasing, releases a huge electron burden, which is something others are typically trying to avoid, but they use it because electrons moving is just current. And this current pulse that now bounces back as this huge electron storm just bounces back the other way from this collision, even bigger, right? Because this is not a normal collision, right, where you have damping. This is a fusion reaction that's going on. So imagine a ball bounced harder back when you threw it at the ground because obviously, extracted energy. And bounces back, and that induces a whole bunch of current through the coils, the same coils.
Oh, wow.
That you use to shoot it at itself in the first place, and then you exhaust it, and then you run it again, and it oscillates, right? It runs like an engine.
Wow.
So cool, right?
Sounds super cool. And like, I am very not well versed in the space, but the Tokamak or Tokamak.
Yeah.
Those things are the ones with the crazy shapes, right? These are the ones that are like computer generated to have really weird shapes. Is that right?
The Tokamaks are donuts, but I'm sure they use a lot of CAD to really optimize this donut. Yeah.
I heard that's one space where people don't use CAD tool, or they probably use to some extent CAD tools, but they have to create a lot of stuff. They're like building their own plugins, and like basically it's a totally custom.
Yeah, it's a serious world out there. Yeah. Even where I used to work at Lilium, they built a lot of simulation software themselves because the aeroelastics, which is a field that anyone who gets into that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But it's a field where the simulators kind of suck. Like you have a structure that impacts the fluid's flow and the aerodynamics, and then the fluid pressure. like changes the structure's shape. It's a propeller or something. It bends it, and then that bounces back, and the whole thing oscillates and wobbles. And there's multiple modes of wobbling. Running these simulations is just bonkers. It's really hard. So they had some incredible people there working on that.
There's so many like crazy engineering problems that I feel like are just like buried inside of these little companies, you know, or not little, but inside of companies, and I just want to see it. You know, it's like. For a while, academia was like leading in machine learning and stuff like that. And so a lot of it would get released, but now a little bit less gets released, I think.
Yeah.
But people are really good at copying. Once you prove something's possible, then it's only a matter of time, it seems, until somebody kind of opens it up. And
you only necessarily need a few hints because it just resolves your search space so much, right? You know, you can prune your tree and you can go after something. In earnest, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I wonder how in electronic design, when people need to do something custom, right? When they need to kind of like build custom simulation or maybe have a part of their board that's automated, how they do it today. And I haven't used Cadence or Altium in a while, but I do know for KiCad, people do build little generators.
Yep.
But I'm curious how far you can take that, because it seems like the tooling isn't fantastic. It's like minimally usable.
Yeah, so I know in Cadence people heavily script it, and that is one of the things that makes particularly the layout really sticky. Is because the layout engineers have their litany of scripts that they know how to use, that they've built up as a professional layout engineer.
Is that the one where they use like TCL or something to program it? Or like, do you know what scripting language they use?
I can't remember what scripting language it is. I know I know Altium's scripting language is also something just weird. It's like, it's not even Perl. It's like Delphi. There you go. It's Delphi script.
Delphi.
5.
That sounds familiar.
I can't remember who else might touch that, but I think it's old from memory. Delphi.
Yeah. There's a really weird thing that happens. It's like design by committee gone wrong. But when I was at TripAdvisor, we had to decide what front end framework we were going to use.
Yeah.
And we were switching from Moo tools. Which is really old. It predates jQuery for people who know jQuery, but it is an old web tool, and they were picking the next thing. And they could choose between React, Angular, or this thing called Dust. And Dust didn't go anywhere. It's like a templating language or something like that. But like, even if they had picked Angular or React, like those things went on to dominate. So why did they pick Dust? And it's because they were like, oh, these like, you know, these popular solutions, they don't meet all the checkboxes.
Yeah. And someone added a checkbox and didn't really weight it appropriately, and the weighting matters.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And now React, I'm thinking back to that, and React and Angular both have everything they need. I feel like in startups all the time we have to bet on what technology is next, not now, and not look at the list now.
No, and you can't have this rigorous set of specifications either, right? Like we've discussed a few times which language to use to accelerate our compiler at Adapile. So we have primarily implemented everything in Python, and that's great because it's very plastic and it's great for electrical engineers to get in and modify or query if they need to. But if you want to get in there and performance optimize something, not the language for you. So what do you do next? And C++ or C and C++ are obvious because it's C, Python, they're easy to write bindings for, and that's traditionally where people go. And Rust, in comparison, has fantastic like the Rust support in Python is actually incredible. It seems to be better than C and C++, and just with the cleanliness of the language and the tool set, it's awesome. So I'm not sure how you pronounce it, whether it's Python trioxide or Rusty Python, it's PY03 is how they write it. And they've got this incredible tool set around it. We were discussing like how do you go after this, particularly when you've got excellent C++ skills on the team.
Yep.
And then someone brought up, which language was it? It was some not quite functional language, Haskell-esque, that they would prefer to use instead of Rust. And I almost got the ick.
Yeah,
you know? And I really didn't want to cut off the conversation there. And this was just a group of friends with a beer afterwards. And it's like, why do I get the ick at a third-party language like this? And I think the answer is because like when there's something sufficiently adjacent that like just dominates, like it's so much easier to hire and get people on board and get people excited.
Yep.
And that fervor is like potent. You know, it's just necessary, particularly in open source or open core companies.
Yep, absolutely. There's always engineers too, which is great about them. They love to experiment and see new technologies. Yeah. And that's super important for the development of technologies. Especially we're technology companies. We need to see what other people are doing and experiment with things to understand it. But that's how you kind of get silos in the company. Yeah. So what a phrase I used to throw around, I haven't thrown it around too much yet because we're just getting started, but I wonder if I'll bring it back. But I always used to say use baby tools. So I was like, is this the baby tool? Like what, what's like the kind of solution that works?
What
that
an idiot
is
Matt
just
used
so
this
obvious.
tool. Like this guy, I don't know. I'm pretty dumb. And so if I can't, actually I typically use myself as the metric in that. Maybe I shouldn't be so self-deprecating, but I'm like, hey guys, I'm pretty dumb. And if I can't like implement something in whatever you've picked, then it's a problem, you know?
Yeah, and luckily we've all got, this might be a good transition too, luckily we've all got our back pocket baby with AI now, because if the AI doesn't get that code, if it's like making mistakes, then...
AI is growing up, Seve.
AI is growing up.
AI is growing up. We are now at 3.5 versions old for specifically for our dear friend Claude.
Yes.
Or Claude, I think people typically prefer, but Claude just sounds so fun. So today, wasn't it? They just announced the upgraded 3.5 Sonnet and a new model, 3.5 Haiku.
Yep.
Exciting stuff.
It's super exciting. Sonnet and Haiku are the two models I use most frequently. And Sonnet, I think, among coders is the one to go to. It's like, it's top of the line. Some people were kind of sometimes switching to O1 Preview, but with this new release, they are claiming that they are better than O1 Preview.
Yeah,
so
that's a big, bold claim.
Very big.
And so specifically, I've got the press release in front of me. Apparently, Claude 3.5 Haiku matches the coding performance of Claude 3 Opus, the previous largest model. And if I remember correctly, Haiku is the smallest. Is that correct?
Haiku is the smallest.
That is incredible.
Insane.
Do you remember the parameter count on these models?
I do not know. Do they release that? I have no idea.
It's not in this press release, which is why I don't have the numbers right in front of me. But that is an incredible claim because Opus is fantastic, but if I remember correctly, was too slow to typically run for things like Cursor. And so I believe it was primarily backed by Sonnet, right? And now you're skipping the whole level and getting that top Opus quality suggestion in the smallest model with additional performance. That is incredible.
Yep, it's
so
crazy.
Cool.
I think it might point to, people are speculating on what their internal process is, but it's possible that the new Opus is already trained and they distilled down to Sonnet, then they distilled down to Haiku because that's been shown to create really, really good models. So that's just super exciting. I mean, the thing is, the fact that, like, my expectation, and I haven't used it yet because this is like literally hours ago. This is so fresh.
It's currently 10:30 a.m.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But you have a speed expectation with Haiku and Sonnet, and I think that's why the model size is pretty relevant to users.
Yes.
So if we're getting Opus performance with Haiku, that's incredible. And then if we're getting, Sonnet performance or it's Sonnet being much better but being the same speed, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm stoked for both of those things.
Yeah.
Interesting question. If you what's your AI acceleration of choice? Is it Cursor? Is it GitHub Copilot?
Yes, the two things I use are Cursor and AIDR, which is a command line program.
Okay, awesome. And so with those two, would you pick the upgraded Sonnet that is smarter or the Haiku, which is faster, but it's as smart as the old, most intelligent model, shall we say?
Yeah, I think for my coding tasks, my time, there is not a model today that is good enough where like the time trade-off makes sense. So
interesting. So you would prefer the smarter model?
Always smarter. It's like, because just debugging will take so much time if it gets it wrong. So I want that thing to be as smart as possible.
What's the chunk size you typically generate?
How AIDR works. AIDR is my tool of choice. Cursor is like my backup in small things. But with AIDR, it will. I actually put my entire code base into context, so I use the whole context.
Yep.
And then it will make all the edits for a file, so it will do a full PR.
Oh. Okay.
And that's usually how I work. We try to chunk our little issues so that they're kind of big. But, we're talking about 100 to 300 lines of code changes for each one.
Wow.
Web projects, backend APIs, and sometimes very obscure TypeScript circuit problems.
Interesting. And this is how you do most of your work, or how much of your time, or how much of your content, how much of your time do you spend in one mode or the other of manually writing something versus using AIDR to do it for you? Yeah,
I would say at least 70% of the code I write is written by AIDR, and then I'm just tweaking it.
Wow.
I come in for hard problems only. And I think for me, I actually, we did a big refactor, and one of the goals of the refactor was to make the code more approachable for AI.
Wow.
Which it sounds like, I think that intuitively, a lot of people would say, okay, we'll put everything into one file then, because that's really easy or something like that. It's like, no. That messes up a ton of stuff.
That's AI, no, you got to shoot forward a little. You got to treat it like AIDR can have your whole repository, it sounds, as context,
right.
And maybe multiple. Can it do multiple?
We only do, that's another thing, is splitting up the repos so that they can kind of work. But this is both a problem, it's both a blessing and a curse. We have many, many repos. We have over 100 repos to run TS Circuit. And so it's very good at operating within a single repo, but it can't do the integration. So I spend a lot of time integrating too.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How about you? How does your AI code workflow work?
It's cursor for me. With the tools, I spend a little bit of time experimenting in the tools, but my co-founder is extremely into getting into the depths of whatever's latest and greatest and newest and seen.
Yeah.
And so I typically sort of use that as a bit of a filter, because when he comes to me and Ryan says "Oh, dude, you gotta get using cursor," I'm like,
yeah,
sounds great. I'll give it a crack.
I think it's true with both, with cursor and AIDR. It just like any tool, you have to practice with it and get good at it, because one feature I don't use from cursor that I think would improve things a lot is that kind of composer window where you can put in a bunch of files and then have it do a bunch of stuff. I never use this.
Interesting. That's that's my primary generation mode.
Yeah. Okay.
So interesting. So okay, one phrasing that you had right at the start of this, our computer baby, Claude, as it grows up, do you think it's displaying human-like, I don't want to call it atrophying of its creativity or something, but it's distilling of its capability is impacting it in other areas, or do you think it's broadly more capable continuously?
Right now, it seems like if there was a curve, we're on the very early phases where almost any improvement is going to be positive, and it's not going to be. Somebody asked me the other day, when you measure how good an AI is, do you just look at the correctness of the code? Do you just run tests and verify the correctness? Or do you look at the quality of the variable naming and the architecture and other things that are less tangible and less objectively tested?
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah. You kind of have to, but at the same time, if it is more correct, it tends to also be better at variable naming. It tends to be better at everything, architecture. So right now, they all kind of go along together, but eventually they won't. And a very good example of where Sonnet is very annoying for us is in the TypeScript world, we have decided not to use this function called for each.
Okay.
Because you have for loops that are for in whatever, and that is a built-in syntax. And then you have this function for each that you can execute on arrays. And we've kind of decided not to use that, but for whatever reason, probably a pre-processing step from Claude, they love to use that function. And so we're always refactoring that part of Claude's code.
Oh, interesting. Why don't you use for each?
So in JavaScript, we have a lot of async and sync code that gets mixed together. And in a for each loop, you can't use a keyword called await. And so you end up having to refactor them a lot. Yeah. So
just if you don't write it that way in the first place, then you don't have to refactor it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Makes sense.
And there's another weird thing is it removes comments a lot. For whatever reason, it just doesn't like comments.
Damn it. So we are definitely at a 3.5-year-old engineer so far.
Yeah, that sounds, 3.5-year-old engineer. Yeah. That's an interesting way to age AI models. I almost wish there was a score like that. How many years of experience, equivalent does this AI model have?
So even if it's getting better at, even if it's getting better at the coding, the software side of things, is it atrophying in its legal capabilities, for argument's sake? If you answered a law question, would it be getting worse? Do we have any idea if it's specializing?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I do ask ChatGPT. Yeah, the most recent category I've been asking it a lot about is politics, because we have an election coming up.
How many days is it now? It's like
14. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank God. Well,
it's very, very close.
I don't get to vote, so please do it on my behalf, everyone out there. I won't say which way. Just go vote.
Just go vote, you know? That's what yeah. But I've been asking a lot about politics because it's hard to know exactly what candidates are saying. They always seem to say something in a very positive way.
And they say a lot of things as well.
And they say a lot of things.
So much content.
Yeah.
It's almost like they treat their job as saying things rather than doing things.
Just being like a vibe.
Being a vibe.
When I first started live streaming, people said they liked me because of just the general vibe I put out, and that's why they would follow. Yeah. I mean, but it makes you question, like, what's more important, the vibe or the content?
The vibe or the content.
You know?
We could ask the same of this. This podcast. The vibe or the content.
The vibe or the content, put it in the comment. Are you here for the vibes or here for the content? A little bit of both? Hopefully.
Hopefully there's both. I'd take it. So what kind of questions would you ask it then? Like, did Trump steal the election or?
No, like, I think when we'll get into this in the future, but like, there's a lot of tax policy that, is usually painted with a broad brush.
Okay. Like the rich will start paying for something. It's like,
exactly.
Okay, like which rich people?
So it's like, what are the nuances on the details? Where has this been done before? Yep. Especially like in other countries, like how did this pan out?
Yes. And great questions.
Yeah. But you can't really ask it to make a decision for you, but you can certainly get a lot of backing data to help you make it.
I find it, it's a great research tool. If you say like, what keywords should I search for here? Or what like topics of interest should I look up?
Yep.
That's one of the ways I research the topics for the show. Hey, like give me a rundown, guys. Like what's going on here?
What does the normie think so that I can add my sort of flair onto it,
Yeah, you don't ask it for an opinion. You just ask it where to look in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you use Perplexity? That's really hot right now.
I haven't used Perplexity at all, actually. Like give it TLDR. What is Perplexity in comparison?
So Perplexity is basically, it's kind of what we're talking about right now, where they specialize in getting references and being a search engine that uses AI.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It's not just doing summarization. It's actually like really pulling together all the information so that you can disagree with it and stuff like that. So it's really optimizing for like finding the truth, I would say.
Google's little AI at the top of their search is really like probably going head to head with it then, is it?
I think so. I think Perplexity is a lot better about bringing in sources. And it's even from a UI perspective, it brings in so many sources that you can kind of like go to where it got its answer from. With Google, sometimes the answers are just wrong.
Yep, I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We went from like Google being too afraid to ship because they've had these models available for so long.
Yep.
Like as a random note, Google was showing off the capabilities of their transformer models for a long time, but not releasing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thanks,
so,
Google.
Yeah, right. But I think that we're afraid of what did happen. We had a brief period where there was a lot of weird stuff happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the founding fathers all being, people of color and stuff like that, which was like,
I like to apply control theory to social situations too. And if you just like look at a typical control curve of, a response, you're going to have a like overcorrect and then oscillate and then
exactly
like dampen, right? And this all completely depends on your damping and your response curves. But I find that overcorrection is a pretty typical response. And it's actually the fastest way to get to the correct response as well, I should note. So it's not necessarily evil. You often have overcorrection intentionally in a control loop.
Yeah.
You accept it.
It's a good theory for how startups and innovation work because, you probably should have that overcorrection. If you want to move safely to the destination, you're going to get there a lot slower than if you just kind of whoops and then came back. Yeah. Which also kind of is a big debate on Twitter right now because a lot of indie hackers are getting hacked.
Indie hackers are getting... That is pretty funny, though. They kind of had it coming, didn't they?
Yes. They...
indie hackers getting hacked by the old school hackers in their mum's basements?
They're getting hacked by each other. Because I don't know what it is with these communities, but when you have a lot of independent minds, you have a lot of different ideas, and a lot of people have different ideas about security, especially for early stage companies.
Okay.
So some people believe you should be perfectly secure from day one, and other people believe security is kind of a spectrum, and you always exist on that.
It's very true. You're going to air gap your machine that you develop on, so no one can get your code before you actually make the pitch. Like, no, obviously not.
Right.
It's so stupid. And so, obviously security is a spectrum, but where do I lie on that? Interesting question. I think that I typically lie on it of we're an open core company, and so protect our personal secrets and information and the things that we're legally required to do so. And then if someone gets my code or a database or something, it's like, whoopsie. I'll scrape it, have fun. Like, it'll hopefully be better for all of us.
Right. Yeah, like our data sheets or something like that.
Exactly, our component database.
Yeah, and then for both of us, I guess it's easier for... I actually don't know how you go into enterprises, which is probably a whole podcast, but I know... sometimes it's just easier to sell into enterprise literally with something like an air gap system. Like, you want to use the AI? Well... don't worry, it can't talk to the internet, so it's not going to do anything bad.
Plug it in.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, though, a lot of times, we actually had this at Seam. We were selling to hotels.
Yep.
And it was hard to know how old the Windows version would be on that front desk computer.
Yep.
So we just put our software on a literal box.
And we said... And you ship them the Nook?
Exactly. And just ship it to them.
Yep.
So a lot of times that's easier, and it's on their closed network, so they don't have as many problems. And I feel like open source companies are particularly suited for that kind of sales strategy where, security, it's just never really a problem for enterprise customers. And then the cloud offering, obviously... You have to do stuff to protect your users. Or outsource the security. Just give it to Auth0 or somebody else who's going to, watch that very carefully.
Yep. Important stuff. The other interesting part of the new Claude release is that it has a computer interface.
Holy moly, we almost didn't talk about the computer use.
The computer use. This is huge. And it reminded me because the security aspect, we don't have any naughty AI yet, but let's be real. I kind of hope it exists deep down. It's going to be fun when we have AI agents that are a bit naughty sometimes. Like Grok, I guess, already falls into that category for other reasons.
Yes. So computer use could I can't believe we're already jumping to the super bad things. So first of all, but it is true. You could have AI automatically do a lot of exploits now. Right? It's going to be probing your forgot password forms and all this stuff to figure out what's going wrong, and it can do it at scale. Because what Claude has done is made it so, or Anthropic has done is they've made it so you can now use a computer with AI. That's now API accessible, and people are going to be able to use computers. I'm actually so excited for this feature because the feedback loop from for designing, in TS Circuit right now, one of the biggest annoyances is putting together the footprint, we got to put together a footprint. And it's all right, we write code, look at the results, compare it to datasheet, and that's the loop.
Yeah.
And I've had no way to get this into the loop. And so it's one of the biggest areas for actually contributors for TS Circuit because AI can't do it.
Or it's not good at it, at least.
It's not good at it.
Yep.
We make very slow progress there. So that's where people come in, and it's kind of easy, but...
Do you think we're going to have, if it might already exist, it's been out for 3 hours now or something, but a Claude-based, Apple Genius type thing?
Oh, something... So Apple Genius, you kind of spin it up on your phone and then...
Or you go into the Apple store. It's a physics, the people, the geniuses. You walk into an Apple store and you're like, I can't get it to the Wi-Fi, and I think that's like, if you're talking about like the baby steps, like the simple IT things, have you tried turning it off and on again? You're going to have Claude go over to your power button and knock out your computer.
Yeah, literally just take care of it. I think that would work a lot. I mean, when I talk to family members, a lot of times they're like inside of my, by the way, I don't use Microsoft Word, but they're like, I have an issue in Microsoft Word. I can't get this like paragraph fixed or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I kind of, we kind of just know intuitively, but for stuff like that, oh my gosh, that is going to probably kill the support services at a lot of companies, I would imagine.
Possibly.
Right?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, this is like the kind of feature as well that, the reason I was so excited about the Siri update is because it has the shortcuts API or the actions API, whatever Apple call it.
Yeah.
And it can do useful multi-app tasks on my phone. Hey, Siri, can you Venmo Narayan $20, please? Like, it can't currently do that today, to my frustration. It's insane. It seems so obvious. But this is another generic interface. Apple's, one of the few companies that could have done it in that way.
Right.
And Claude has now made a generic interface in a similar manner available to software engineers to create an app that can do the same thing on your computer. And you kind of, like, security-wise, have to really trust this thing. You're like, hey, could you log into this website? And it's going to go into your password manager and copy out the password for you and stick it in.
That's true.
That's how you behave. That's how you would expect it to as well.
Oh my gosh. Exciting future. Well, I cannot wait to see what people do with this new Anthropic release. It's going to be crazy.
Indeed. Thank you, Seve. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.